Hello, this is Christian here. Welcome to episode 2 of our AJAX application. In this video, we're going to create the CRUD APIs in Node.js. So let's go and see how that's done. Okay, so here in the IDE, previously we created this app here, and I just wanted to run this again one more time. Last time I wasn't able to run NodeMon because I realized that my PowerPoint was running, and for some weird reasons, it did not let me use it. So when you run NodeMon like this, NodeMon, you see that it starts the application. It runs the index.js file. So basically, it runs this in Node.js here, right? Index here. And then your server is running at port 8080. And I showed you last time that if you go over here, if you click refresh, right, everything will work fine. If you go back to the code, it makes some changes to your source code. If I remove that again, make that changes, you see that in the terminal, it refreshes that and it reloads that automatically for us. Okay, so basically you can just, turn this off and you don't have to worry about it because it's working very nicely. Now, if you go back and refresh it, you should see the new changes takes effect right away. Okay, so we'll leave that off for now, and then let's go and start our code. So before we do the operations, I want to go into the folder here and create a new folder. It's common to call it models, so I'll put models in here. And for my example, I'm going to create a books a model. Okay, so just some information about books in here. And I already typed this somewhere else in my document, so instead of doing all this save us time, I'm just going to copy that from my document and put it here. I think I have it somewhere in the assignments. If you go to the assignment, you should see it, but it looks just something like that. And I'll just explain this very quickly. So this is a JSON data, right? As an object, basically, it's in JSON. Well, it's not in JSON format. It's not a legal JSON document because of the single quotes here. So a JSON text will have only double quotes, but nonetheless, it's an object. So I have 3 books in here. I have 5 fields, one for the ID, the book title, the author, the publisher, and the year. Okay, and then the second book and so on. So it's an array. Okay, you have to put into an array or a list of books. So each of these will be mapped to index 0, index 1, index 2, and so on. So the ID is important because we're going to use that to, search our record, books, and then so on. So finally, you want to export that out, this object out, so we can use it in the other application. And in separate videos, I show you how to do that. So we're going to export that as a books, and then we're going to save that. So we're done here. Now in the app here, then we're going to import that so we can use. So let's go to the very top here, and I'll just go and import a books. I like to use const quite a lot, you see, but you don't have to use. You can use var, and the reason why I use const is I don't want to accidentally delete my data. Okay, it's gonna safeguard my code. So I'll use the books. Okay, put inside the curly brackets here. So you're trying to extract the data or destructure the array basically from the module export. And so require, and this time we're going to get it from the dash models / books. Okay, so we're going to get the books out of that module express. And you see if you mouse over that, it already tells you what it has, right? What type it is. And so that's our books object. Now let's go ahead and create our APIs down here. The first one here is the get. Let's sort of get all books. Okay, so this one here is quite simple. You just basically return everything back. So the API is going to put here /API/. Okay, that's the endpoint. So app.get and then /API/. It's got to match the route. Okay, this is the route that needs to match. And we can then write in the request and response. I'm using arrow function here. And then inside here, all we have to do is basically we return that book. So JSON and then send that off to wherever it's being requested. Okay, so we can save this and we can go and test this out. Okay, so let's save that and go back to the browser up here. And notice this is the backslash, the root directory. That's why we saw the message. But if I go to /API and /, you see all the book information comes through, right? So this is working beautifully. And these are the data that is received from the books. Okay, so if you go to a different route, like 1, you see that doesn't work, right? Now we want to get that information. If we want to get the first book, then I pass in this ID. If I pass in ID 2, I'm going to get the second book and so on. So let's go and do that part. Back in the IDE here. So this part is done. Now we're going to do a get one record API / within ID. Okay, that is the syntax. So down here, say app.get. It's still a get method. And then the ID would be something like that. This is the pretty standard, okay? Node uses this, so make sure you put the colon and then the ID here. Angular, we use something similar, and most frameworks use something similar. So again, back to the request, response, arrow function, and then what do we do? Now, how do I get this ID here? Now, this is not a request, okay? We're not. It is a request, but we're not getting this from the URL. I showed you in a separate video like some time ago that you can get the data from the URL by doing something like request.query.id, right? This one here comes from the query in the URL, whereas in our case, we're not getting that from here, right? We're using, it's going to come in through the body of your document, and it comes from a different parameter. Okay, this query is referring to something like this. If for like a question mark ID is 10, it's going to get that. But since we're not doing that way, I'm getting the ID here in the API. So to get that parameter, it's called a parameter. And you would call something similar, except it's called params. So here would be req.params. And then here you just attach what it is. And our param is can be an ID. Okay, and then we assign that to a variable. I'll call it just let ID equals that. And then what do we do? Well, now we have to search the list, right? How do we find in our list here? How do we find this ID or this ID here to match that? So we need to search for the ID in each record. Once you find that ID, a matching ID, let's say ID number 2, you find that ID. How do I return this second record from this books list? Well, I need to return the index position of this book 2. So this would be index of 1. If I look at book 3, and then it returns index of 2. And so you need to search through the list here to get that information from the database here, right? Or in this case, we're just getting from a particular record in the book. So you just use a very simple JavaScript. It's built into the system already. And so I'm going to go here and say let the index, this is the index of the book, by the way, it's going to get from the books, and there is a function called find index, a very useful function. It takes another, as you can see here, another function. This is a, the long way would be like a function, and it takes a parameter. This is for each book. This is like the for each one, kind of similar. And then it will be something like that, right? Okay, so, and then you find a matching, you will return the index of this a match. But I'm going to show you a different way to do that. So you're basically using arrow functions. Arrow functions are very useful in many of these scenarios, and makes the code really short also. So the book, it's like for each book, okay, or for each record here, for each record, look at that first, and we're going to match its ID. Okay, so over here, we're going to match the ID, book.id. If this ID matches this ID here, then we found it. Okay, if that is the case, if it's found, then it will return the index at that position to this variable here. If it's not found, then it will return a -1. Okay, remember that either you get the index or you get a -1. Okay, so now I put a note here. If found index, then return the index. I should say not for index. If found the record, then return the index position. Else return a -1. Okay, so we need to check for that when we do it down here. Okay, so I would say if the so we say something like if index is not equal to a -1. If that's not the case, then I want to have a variable called let's put here what should we call it? I put here, let's just say let record is, let's just say default is not found. Okay, no record found. That is the default message. If it's found, then I'm going to replace record with that new record from the books of index. Okay, we get that. And then finally down here, we will return that record. So either it found something or it doesn't. Okay, so we'll pass that to the user. And let's go and do a little test. So back in the code here, and we know that 1 is in there. So if I type 1, you see that I got the book 1 back. If I type 3, I got the right book. If you put 4, I get no record found. So it works beautifully, right? So far, so good. Okay, so we got the get done. Now let's do the easier one. We can do the delete one. Kind of similar to the get here. Okay, I need to get the ID. So app.delete. The API would be /API/ID. I need an ID to delete that, right? And then the request, response. And then kind of similar here. So I'm just going to basically copy this, right? Copy this and put it right in here. I'll just do a modification here. I need to get the ID. And then if no record found, it says no record found. And then I'll get the index of that record if it's so. If I found it, then good. And if it's not a -1, then I'm going to go ahead and remove that index. So to do that, you do something like this. Books dot splice. I'm going to splice it at the position of the index. And all I'm doing is just 1. Okay, if you don't put 1 here, you're going to delete everything from that position on. So you don't want to do that. You just want to delete 1 record when it is found. And that's important, right? So when you do something like that, just make sure you splice only 1. Also, the reason why I say you check for -1, okay, is because if you do a -1 like this, it's completely legal in JavaScript because the -1 is actually the last record. It will always be the last record. It doesn't matter how many there are. So that's kind of tricky. So make sure you don't want to do that. That's why I checked that to make sure I'm not doing any deletion or record found here. And once it's done, then we can put that here, and we can put the record that's been deleted back if you want to, or you can just put a record is. I should put a message in a record maybe. Yeah, I could put the record. Well, yeah, it's up to you. Some people will put the record deleted, send it back, and this record was deleted, or just say it's just a message. So just put here record deleted. Okay, I'll change this to a message. I don't like the word record here. I'm not really sending a record back in this scenario, right? So it'll be a message. Okay, so again, let's go and test that first. Back to the browser, and I'm doing well. Actually, I can't test yet because I'm not able to do that. So browser does not really support this delete and post. I mean delete and put here, right? So it only supports a post and the get if you do a web form. So this part we can really test here we'll test later when we write your AJAX code. Through AJAX you can. Okay, so we'll not be able to do that here. Sorry, I forgot about that. All right, so we'll test it later. And then the next one here, let's go and do the delete all. This one should be very easy. Also very dangerous. Okay, the API would be API/nothing, right? We don't need any ID. And then response. And all we have to do is basically reset this book, right? So a couple of ways. You can do something like, because I have my book as constant, if you go to the very top, right, I have a constant. So I can't do something like this. I can't say books is like that, right? You can't do that because it's constant, because I cannot set it. What I can do though is, if it's not a constant, you can just do that and you wipe out the whole data. We're done. But otherwise, you will have to do something like this. So I'm using the splice again. I'm splicing at the position of a 0 position, and then splice everything. Okay, from that point on, all those records will be deleted, right? So that's quite handy. Again, if you just want to delete one record, with the second parameter is the number of count. If you want to do everything, then just don't put anything there. It will remove everything from the 0 position, and so this will be wiped out. And then we'll just send a message back to the user saying all records deleted. So they know what's going on. All right, so we got that done. Just, I guess, 2 more. Next is the post. This is for inserting a new record. API, I should have do that, but API, no ID. This one here, I already did already. So API slash, and up here is the API ID. Okay, so let's go and do that here. Post the API slash, and then we're going to get the function, the arrow function. Okay, so now we get the, now we need to get the data from the body. So we'll just say let new book is coming from the request.body. Okay, that's it, because the body contains the content of the data that is sent from. And then once we do that, we just add it to the book. Again, because we're adding to the book, we don't care about the order in this case, right? So I want to say books.push. You push it to the existing book. You push a new book to it, and then we're done. So we can send data back. Just say new book added, or whatever message you want to use. You can probably send the data back. It's up to you. So that's pretty straightforward. And I'm not checking for duplicates in ID. So usually you want to prevent it from happening, because I might get a same book that has an ID. So how do you do that? And I'll leave that as an exercise for you to do. So kind of similar to up here, right? You have to check for the index, see if it's there. If it's not there, add it. Otherwise, I'm sorry, it's duplicates. Okay. So put a note here, just to say should check for duplicates. Okay, and see what you can do with that one. And then here we have the put. This is for updating an existing record, and API would be API/ID. Okay, so add put, and then here API :ID, and then we have the request response. Okay, so the data is coming in as just like this. Okay, I'm gonna copy that. I get all the information, and then now I need to search in that book to find the ID here. So I also need the ID. So let ID is equal to request req.parameters ID. and then I need to search in the body to find that ID. So it's the same thing up here, right? Same statement. So I'm going to copy this, and so I do something here, copy this whole thing here, and paste it down here, just to make sure I got that message. So if it index is not -1, go ahead, and I'm not going to splice it though. I'm going to, what I do, right? We're going to put here at the index position. We're going to replace that with the new book. I shouldn't say new book here, but it should be just the updated book. Okay, the new content. So we replace that index in the right place. Okay, and then just say record updated. And then we'll put a message up here as well. Put the top here. Say let, and I'll just say no record found. All right, I think that is pretty much it for our CRUD APIs. We're able to update our data, able to add new data, and we can delete all data, delete one, get one, and get all. Okay, so again, we're not be able to test it here yet. So in the next video, we're going to go to the front end and create an API, a set of the API's AJAX calls to consume these data. If you have any questions, please post and let me know.